Two childhood friends, Sung-hyo, the star architect, and Seok-ryu, the successful employee at a renowned US firm. But as we'll soon find out, there's much more than meets the eye. Meet Sung-hyo and Seok-ryu, neighbors who just can't resist showing off their successful kids. Naturally, these two can't help but one up each other, arguing about whose child is more successful. But the plot thickens. Just as Seung Hyo gets a huge award as a co founder of his firm, Seok Ryu makes a surprise return to Korea amidst all the buzz about her upcoming wedding. Talk about timing, right? Enter Mo Yoon, Seok Ryu's childhood friend, and a paramedic who picks Seok Ryu up at the airport. As the two reminisce about old times while enjoying tteokbokki, we start to realize that Seok Ryu's sudden return is not as simple as it seems. Something's off. Seok-ryu seems to be avoiding her brother for some reason, and when she bumps into Seung-hyo, it's clear these childhood friends aren't as thrilled to see each other as we might expect. In fact, the first words out of Seung-hyo's mouth are, "What are you doing here?" Ouch. What follows is a hilarious bickering session over Seok-ryu standing on Seung-hyo's land. Yes, you heard that right. Then, in an unexpected twist, Seok-ryu hides inside a packing box to avoid her mother's wrath when she returns from her hiking trip. But things take an even funnier turn when Seok-ryu accidentally damages one of Sung-hyo's priceless metal artifacts, revealing a scar from their childhood, thanks to an accident involving barbed wire. Talk about a blast from the past. Meanwhile, Moyun is busy with her paramedic duties, trying to calm down a difficult homeless man when she meets a writer named Kang Dan-ho, who's on the lookout for touching stories about ordinary people. The plot is thickening, folks. Back to Seok-ryu. She's gearing up for battle, layering herself with clothes to protect herself from her mother's infamous punishments. But it turns out Seok-ryu has more to confess than just hiding from her mom. She drops a bombshell. She's called off her engagement and resigned from her high powered job, moving back home for good. Chaos erupts when her mother goes full Asian mom mode with a bunch of leaks. Yes, leaks, chasing her around for a good old slapstick moment. And if you think that's where it ends, think again. Sokryu's father faints dramatically, adding to the absurdity. But what's even more shocking, Seung Hyo helps Seok-ryu escape the madness, and the two take refuge in a park to let the storm pass. In a quieter moment, Seok-ryu opens up to Seung Hyo, revealing how overwhelmed she felt, juggling a new country, a demanding job, and the pressure of a wedding. My CPU overloaded, she says, so I had no choice but to reboot myself. Just when you think it's all over, Seung Hyo gets a call from Seok-ryu's brother. Her mother swears she won't punish her again. But guess what? It's a hoax. Chaos breaks out once more when Seok-ryu finds herself trapped inside the house, courtesy of Seung Hyo's mischievous antics. And in the final heartwarming flashback, we see a younger Seok-ryu protecting a young Seung Hyo from bullies. The past is never far behind. And as Seung Hyo remarks, now that she's back, it's going to get chaotic again. A flashback. It all begins with a simple request. Seok-ryu, determined to help her family, convinces Sung-hyo to join her for a part-time job at a local restaurant, cleaning barbecue grills. While the work is hard, it's a step towards something more, something brighter. The money she earns goes towards two things that mean the world to her: glow-in-the-dark stars for her ceiling and a gold brooch for her mother. But when Seok-ryu wakes up the next morning, she finds herself in a storage room, her former bedroom, now reduced to an empty, cold space. Her mother's grumpy silence greets her. Despite the presence of her friends, Sung-hyo and Mo-woon, who try to check on her mother's anger remains unwavering. The reason behind her mother's frustration? A night before, Seok-ryu had refused to come clean about her return. Even though her parents pushed for the truth, Seok-ryu remained silent, choosing to carry the weight of her own secrets. And with that silence, her mother's anger boiled over. In a lighter moment, Seok-ryu brings rice cakes to Seung-hyo's new office, her way of reconnecting. But the day takes an unexpected turn when Sung-hyo, in front of his co-workers, exposes the truth about their childhood. No longer the hero of their story, Seok-ryu is painted as the mischievous older sister, peeking in on him in the bathroom and bullying him during games. Her childhood image, once polished, now shattered. Meanwhile, Seok-ryu's mother, Mi-suk, is making waves in the neighborhood with her outbursts. Her temper, sparked by Seokryu's situation, causes rumors to spread fast. Whispers of Seokryu being fired, cheated on, and abandoned by her fiancé fill the streets, leaving Misuk even more distraught. While her mother rages, Seokryu drifts through her days, lost in endless bus rides. The weight of being laid off, battling racism at work, and dealing with the heartbreak of her fiancé's betrayal begins to show. Still, she presses on, even buying a pomegranate tree for Sung Hyo as a gift for his grand opening. The tension at home continues to mount, and Mi Suk, now preparing for the grand opening, forbids Seok-ryu from attending, embarrassed by her daughter's struggles. At the event, Mi Suk becomes the subject of jokes, her attempt to present Seok-ryu as a success backfiring. The cracks in Mi-suk's carefully crafted image begin to show when Seok-ryu delivers the brooch to her at the event. Under pressure from her high school friends, Mi-suk lies, claiming Seok-ryu is about to leave for the US, having been scouted by a prestigious company. Sung-hyo watches this from a distance, quietly observing the lie unravel. Later at home, the conflict reaches its peak. Mi-suk demands that Seok-ryu return to the US, refusing to acknowledge her daughter's pain. No matter how hard Seok-ryu tries to explain, Mi-suk remains unyielding, trapped in her own pride. In the end, Seok-ryu walks out, with Sung-hyo following quietly behind her. At the park, Sung-hyo stays by her side as Seok-ryu, no longer able to keep her emotions inside, breaks down. The childhood memories, the weight of her struggles, all come crashing down, and Seung-hyo, ever the quiet support, simply stays with her. When Seok-ryu returns home the next day, something has changed. Her old storeroom, once a symbol of her faded past, has been transformed. The glow in the dark stars now cover the ceiling, a small but significant gesture from Sung-hyo. He's turned her forgotten space into something more, a reminder of the joy and light that still exists in her life. And as Seok-ryu discovers that Sung-hyo has moved back into his old room, directly across from hers, it becomes clear that things are starting to shift. Their shared history, the bond between them, it's all coming full circle, and the memories of childhood, a moment where they tumbled into each other, laughing as they decorated a ceiling with those same glow in the dark stars, are rekindled. In the end, what does it all mean? For Seok-ryu, it's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always the possibility of light. And even when the world seems like it's falling apart, there are people who will stand by you, quietly, faithfully, through it all. Let's take a step back into Sung-hyo and Seok-ryu's past, a memory that reveals the deep bond between them long before the complications of adulthood. It's the day of the swimming competition, and Sung-hyo's parents can't make it. His mother, a diplomat, and his father, a busy doctor, are both absent. But Seok-ryu, she's in the crowd, cheering for him, manically, almost wildly, as if her very voice could carry him across the finish line. This moment, this unwavering support, shows the closeness they share, despite the squabbles and the distance that often defines their relationship. Sung-hyo, with her encouragement, wins the race. The next day, things seem off with Sung-hyo's family. At work, he's presented with an opportunity, a new client looking to build a luxury retirement home. But his heart isn't in it. His mind keeps drifting back to a design competition for his school gymnasium, the very place where he once swam. Meanwhile, Shokryu is taking a different approach to her day. With no job and too much free time, she creates a schedule for herself, an endless loop of games, TV, naps, and spacing out. But even in her aimless wandering, she tries to connect, inviting Shungyo to read a comic with her. Of course, he brushes her off in typical Shungyo fashion. But there's a twist. Later, Shungyo and Mo-un join her at a bookstore, a small but meaningful gesture that hints at their growing bond. Then, fate has a hand in the mix. Seok Ryu unexpectedly crosses paths with her former teacher, now the principal of their school. While helping carry an order from her parents' restaurant, they run into Seung Hyo, who's there for the design competition. It's a chance encounter, but it leads Seok-ryu to something she hadn't expected, a lecture to the students as an alumna. As she stands in front of those students, the question hangs in the air. What was her dream? What had she wanted to be when she was their age? Seok-ryu realizes she doesn't have an answer, but the day doesn't end there. Later, she and Sung-hyo attempt to dig up a time capsule they buried years ago, letters they wrote to their future selves, but as the dirt is unearthed, there's nothing there. The past remains buried, just like the dreams they left behind. Elsewhere, Mo Yun, always the romantic, spots a man clearing traffic during an ambulance ride. She swoons, calling him her ideal type. Little does she know, the man is none other than Dan Ho, the reporter who will soon play a pivotal role in their lives. But that's a story for another time. Back to Sung Hyo, his company is facing its own struggles. He and his co founder, Myung Gu, clash over a prospective client who asks them to plagiarize designs. Sung Hyo is adamant he won't compromise his integrity. The tension between them builds, revealing the pressure he's under. For Seok Ryu, the questions are just as heavy. She meets with a prospective client who wants to recruit her, but Sung Hyo is watching. He encourages her to follow her passion and not settle for a job she hates. But Seok Ryu's response is firm. Not everyone has the luxury of choosing work that makes them happy. And just like that, another argument brews between them. As tensions rise, the past rears its head once more. We learn of Seung Hyo's car accident, the event that shattered his dream of competing in the 2008 Beijing Olympics. His hopes dashed in an instant. He was forced to give up the one thing that defined him: swimming. The next day, Sung Hyo's junior helps mend the rift between him and Mayong-woo, bringing a sense of resolution to the company's issues. But for Seok-ryu, the internal struggle continues. As she tries once again to find that lost time capsule, she meets her former teacher. This time, she doesn't just hide her truth, she confesses that she's quit her job and is unsure of what comes next. Her teacher offers support, reminding her that the future is hers to choose. And then, just as Seok-ryu is starting to make peace with her past, Sung-hyo reveals that he's found the time capsule. With a teasing smile, he brings it to her, and they read the letters they wrote as teenagers. But just as they read their letters to each other, they discovered one crucial thing missing: Mo Yun's letter. And as we know, some mysteries are better left unsolved. Or are they? After reading his letter, Seung Hyo immediately runs home, almost as if he's trying to escape Seok Ryu from stealing it. But why the sudden urgency? Could it be that his feelings for Seok Ryu aren't as buried as he'd like to think? Meanwhile, back at Seok-ryu's home, things aren't looking up. Her family is struggling financially, and her mother's short temper only adds to the tension. It's clear that Seok-ryu's life is far from simple, and despite all the bravado she puts on, there's a lot she's trying to keep together. With nothing to do, Seok-ryu finds herself hanging out at Sung-hyo's firm. It's a bit awkward, but she's doing her best to fill the time. Things take a turn when Myung-gu, Sung-hyo's business partner, informs them that Seok-ryu's former company, Grape, wants to collaborate with them. But there's a catch. None of them are fluent enough in English to really seal the deal. So naturally, Seok-ryu steps up to help as their translator, even though she's feeling uneasy about it. But after the online meeting ends, Seok-ryu overhears a conversation that shakes her confidence. The Gripe team has already decided to work with a different firm, citing tight deadlines and Seung-hyo's company being too new. She's conflicted. Should she tell Seung-hyo the truth? But when she does, he insists on keeping the information from Myung-gu, unwilling to give up just yet. Elsewhere, a new rivalry brews between Mo-yoon and Dan-ho, of all people. They meet at a convenience store, arguing over rare, hard to find flavors of snacks. Seriously, who knew they'd have so much in common? Later, the four childhood friends, Seok-ryu, Sung-hyo, Mo-yoon, and Dan-ho, run into each other again. Dan-ho starts to piece together that the three of them share a history, and when Mo-yoon asks him where he used to live, he gives a vague answer, abruptly leaving the group. Suspicious, right? But Mo Yun's attention is quickly diverted. She meets a curious little girl in the park who's obsessed with crop circles and aliens. just like Mo Yun once was. The two bond instantly over their shared love for science fiction, and as Moyun recounts the encounter to Seokryu later, she jokes about almost losing her best friend to this random kid. The charm of childhood connections never fades. Back to the adults, Seokryu's mother seems more interested in Danho than Seokryu herself, even suggesting he could be a good match for her daughter. But before Moyun's mother can share something important about Danho, they're distracted, leaving us hanging on a potentially crucial revelation. Fast forward to the big meeting. Seung-hyo, Myung-woo, and Seok-ryu are ready to present their proposal to Gripe. But things aren't as smooth as they seem. Seok-ryu is confronted by a former team member from Gripe, a man who once harassed her at her old job. The weight of the past comes crashing down as she remembers the cruel way her colleagues manipulated her. And then it happens. That same colleague belittles her once more, and Seung Hyo overhears. The fury in him is undeniable. He punches the guy, standing up for Seokryu, but Seokryu isn't one to back down. In true crazy woman fashion, she confronts her former teammate, threatening him with evidence of his malpractice. With a smirk, she walks away victorious, a reminder that Seokryu doesn't need anyone to fight her battles. She can do it herself. Later that night, the three friends find themselves at Namsan Tower, letting go of the anger from the day by using love locks to curse the people who mistreated Seokryu. But it's not all bad news. Myungu reveals that Greep has offered them a new project, with old wounds healing, new opportunities on the horizon, and the undeniable chemistry between Seokryu and Seunghyo. The question remains, will they finally confront the feelings they've both hidden for so long? Only time will tell. In the past, Seung-yo arrived in the US, eager to reunite with his childhood friend Seokryu. But as broke students, there was no place for him to stay, so Seokryu sneaked him into her tiny room. It was a simple arrangement, but it would change everything. The next morning, Jung-hyo made a discovery on Seokryu's phone. Her relationship with a Korean-American man named Brian. A stab of jealousy hit him, as he realized what he had never confessed to her. He had always liked her. The weight of those unspoken feelings was too much, and he felt dejected, watching as Seok-ryu moved on without him. Fast forward to today, and Seok-ryu is cooking up a storm. After landing the grape deal, she insists on celebrating with a home-cooked meal. But when she slips, Seong-hyo catches her, his arms wrapping around her in that familiar princess style. It's a small moment, but it feels like something more. As the meal is served, Seung-hyo is pleasantly surprised at how delicious Seok-ryu's cooking is. It's a side of her he's never seen before, one that makes him realize there's still so much he doesn't know about her. Later, Moon joins them, and the three share a rare moment of calm. But things take a turn when Seok-ryu, in a rare moment of vulnerability, shows Moon her pre-wedding pictures and admits that she still hasn't let go of her former fiancé, Brian. Her confession stings, and Seong-hyo, overhearing from the hallway, is left grappling with the words he never wanted to hear. The next day, the group visits a Buddhist temple, where Seong-hyo's mother prays for her son's happiness, hoping their strained relationship can heal. The tension between them is palpable, but so is her longing for peace between them. It's clear there's more history here than meets the eye. Seong-hyo, clearly frustrated by Seok-ryu's confession, becomes irritable. When Myung-woo asks Seok-ryu to help with the Gripe project, Seung-hyo's mood only worsens, leading to a heated exchange between him and Seok-ryu. He chastises her for not pursuing her dream, the one she had promised to follow. But it's hard to shake the feeling that he's not just concerned about her future. He's concerned about something more. Meanwhile, Seung Hyo's past comes knocking. His ex-girlfriend, Jang Dae-hwe, an ongi artist, arrives at the office with a proposal for a collaboration with a global firm. Her arrival stirs up old memories, and Seok Ryu can't help but recall the passionate relationship they shared back in college. She even caught them kissing once, and now it seems like Tai Hui is still very much interested in Seung Hyo. As the day winds down, Seung Hyo and Seok Ryu's father share a drink, and in a surprising turn of events, they decide Seung Hyo will stay in Seok Ryu's brother's room. Seok Ryu, completely oblivious to this arrangement, barges in the next morning and tries to wake Seung Hyo with a bit too much enthusiasm, leading to a hilarious and awkward encounter. It's a bit of a disaster, especially when Dongjin walks in on them in a compromising position. But hey, what are childhood friends for? Of course, the awkwardness doesn't end there. Shung Hyo stubs his toe hard and ends up in a hospital with a cast for a week. And so, Seok Ryu, ever the caretaker, drives him to Tai Hyu's workshop, all the while trying to maintain her composure. But things are about to get even more complicated. At Taehyu's workshop, things aren't as simple as they seem. The atmosphere is warm, full of tradition and community as they help make soybean paste, but there's an undercurrent of tension. Taehyu still harbors feelings for Sung Hyo, and it's clear from her conversation with him that she's aware of his lingering affection for Seokryu. Tai Hui, though, isn't backing down. She wants Sung Hyo back. Seokryu can see it in the way they look at each other, and it's making her uncomfortable. As the day progresses, Seokryu, ever the clumsy one, trips while carrying a large ongi, causing it to fall and spill the soybean paste onto the dirt. It's a disaster, and Seonghyo scolds her in front of Taehui. Her pride takes a hit, but she's not one to back down, especially when it comes to something she's passionate about. Elsewhere, Mo-yoon is urgently called to the hospital after the little girl she met in the park, Yondu, is brought in with a health scare. It turns out Yondu is Danho's daughter, and as Mo-won scolds Danho for leaving a 5-year-old alone at home, Yondu scolds Mo-won in return, telling her she's going to ignore her now. Sometimes it seems like everyone's a little out of sync. Back at Taehu's workshop, Seok-ryu works her magic with the leftover soybean paste, making a batch of noodles for everyone. Despite the earlier mishap, her food is delicious. The entire group is taken aback by how good it tastes, especially Sung Hyo, who's been distant all day. Later, Tai Hui catches up with Sung Hyo, and in a candid conversation, she confronts him about his feelings. She tells him that while their relationship in college lacked passion, she's noticed how he's looked at Seokryu. The truth is out. Sung Hyo's heart has always belonged to her. It's a hard pill to swallow, but it's time for both of them to face what's been lingering between them for years. As the night winds down, Seokryu finds herself in a quiet moment. Sung-hyo has washed her clothes and she's searching for the 100-year-old soy sauce in the pot, only to realize something profound about herself. Her true dream isn't just to live in a world of design or architecture, it's to cook, to nurture others through food. And for the first time, she begins to see the future she wants. Meanwhile, Sung-hyo, observing quietly from the doorway, comes to his own realization. He still likes Seok-ryu. The weight of their unspoken feelings is too much to ignore any longer. Seung-hyo can't help but reminisce about all of Seok-ryu's firsts. Her first lost tooth, the first time she rode a bike on her own, the first time she ran away from home, and even the first time she got engaged. All these moments, these milestones, hold a special place in his heart. But there's one first he'll never forget. The first time she confessed to a high school senior. The scene shifts to a visit at Seung-hyo's house. Seok-ryu drops by with some side dishes, and after a warm exchange with his parents, she heads upstairs to find him. But when she stumbles upon an old letter Seung-hyo wrote in high school, she can't resist reading it. What she doesn't expect is Seung-hyo catching her in the act. He snatches the letter from her, crumbles it up, and tosses it aside, dismissing it as a joke. Seok-ryu, sensing the tension in the air, brushes it off and heads to her father's restaurant. But something feels off. It's clear that Sung-hyo's mood has shifted. Later, over at her father's restaurant, Seok-ryu reminisces about the good old days when she loved coming here as a child. But instead of her father sharing in that nostalgia, he seems to be hiding something. There's an air of unease between them. After the awkward letter incident, Sung-hyo begins acting distant, pulling away from Seok-ryu. She bumps into Tai-hui, but when Sung-hyo insists that he and Tai-hui have work to do, Seok-ryu can't help but feel rejected. Meanwhile, Seok-ryu meets up with Mo-woon, who's on a mission to get dispatched to the South Pole. To boost her chances, Mo-woon's been learning to drive a boat, and her enthusiasm for pursuing passions leads Seok-ryu to reflect on her own dreams. She shares her decision to take a cooking class, and they decide to celebrate. Sung-hyo, however, declines their invitation. That night, Sung-hyo runs into Dan-ho and invites him for a drink. The night takes a turn when they end up not drinking but hanging out at Dan-ho's house, where Sung-hyo meets Dan-ho's daughter. Sung-hyo, feeling the weight of his emotions, opens up about his complicated feelings for Seok-ryu. Dan-ho, ever the wise friend, gently probes into Sung-hyo's heart. Sung-hyo confesses how he's torn between his deep affection for Seok-ryu and the fear of ruining their long-standing friendship. Dan-ho, drawing from his own experience in swimming competitions, encourages Sung-hyo to be brave. But here's where it gets interesting. Mo-eun, ever the schemer, has been eavesdropping. It turns out she already knew about Sung-hyo's feelings, having dug up the time capsule and read the letters from years ago. Secrets are starting to unravel. On the other side, Seok-ryu begins her first cooking class. But later that evening, as Sung-hyo reunites with some old friends, he inadvertently finds himself caught in a web of secrets. He sees Seok-ryu's father helping a drunk woman, and it quickly becomes clear that there's more going on beneath the surface than anyone realized. The next day, Seok-ryu's mother and her friends gather, gossiping about her husband's suspicious behavior, coming home late, acting distant. They wonder if he's having an affair, and it's only a matter of time before her mother begins to investigate, uncovering a troubling secret. Her husband has taken out a loan and drained their bank account. Meanwhile, Moyun and Dan-ho cross paths at the convenience store. Moyun, ever the manipulator, urges Dan-ho not to sacrifice everything for his daughter, warning him that she resented how her mother gave up everything for her. In a moment of vulnerability, Dan-ho shares his hopes of winning Yeon-du back, but Moyun's true agenda becomes clear. She pushes him to help her, but things take a messy turn when Dan-ho gets too drunk to respond. And back at Seok-ryu's father's restaurant, things go from bad to worse. A pair of con artists claims that their food was contaminated with hair, and in a twisted turn of events, they demand compensation for a ruined watch, one that turns out to be a cheap knockoff. They threaten to go viral with the story, putting the family business in jeopardy. Sung-hyo always steps ahead, takes charge of the situation, meeting with the fraudsters and exposing their scam. With the help of Dan-ho and Seok-ryu's brother, they catch the culprits red-handed. Seok-ryu's father is saved from the scandal, but the strain on the family is far from over. Later, Seok-ryu thanks Sung-hyo, but things take a sharp turn when he bluntly tells her, "We're not kids anymore, Seok-ryu. Stop chasing me." He's afraid of what admitting his feelings might do to their friendship. Seok-ryu, too, has her own memories. She recalls the first times Sung-hyo experienced things, his first taste of Korean food, his first time swimming, and his first crush. But she's never known who it was. It's a bittersweet moment of realization that maybe, just maybe, they've always been more than just friends. The next day, Seok-ryu brings him a dish. The first Korean meal he had when he arrived. His favorite dish. She hopes it will be a gesture that shows how much she cares. But Sung-hyo, overwhelmed with emotion, lashes out. He tells her once again to stop chasing him, leaving Seok-ryu heartbroken and confused. Seok-ryu demands answers. "We're friends," she insists. "I have every right to interfere in your life." We see Sung-hyo in a bind. His secret might just come to light, and the tension between them has never been more palpable. Seok-ryu questioning Sung-hyo about the meaning of his outburst, which he seems to have a faint idea about. But lo and behold, Seok-ryu's former fiancé, Hyun-jun, appears out of nowhere. Clearly, the two friends are shocked. Hyun-jun claims he's come back to meet Seok-ryu. Before they can react, Seok-ryu's parents find the trio, and amidst her father's bloodthirsty threats to kill Hyun-jun, her mother promptly invites him to dinner. The friends part ways, with Sung-hyo and Seok-ryu stunned at the turn of events. Back at home, after feeding Hyun-jun, Seok-ryu's mother questions him about whether Seok-ryu cheated on him. He takes responsibility for their separation, citing that it was his fault. This confession has a profound effect on Seok-ryu's mother, who transforms from a caring host into her violent, crazy persona within seconds, with Seok-ryu and her family trying to prevent her from going to jail. Meanwhile, Mo-in meets Sung-hyo, who promptly updates her about the shocking arrival of Seok-ryu's fiancé. When Seok-ryu leaves to protect Hyunjun and prevent her mother from facing charges of murder, Hyunjun tells her he's come to take her back. However, for Seok-ryu, the relationship has already ended. She leaves and crashes at Mo-yoon's house, confessing that she felt calmer than she'd anticipated. In a flashback scene, we discover that when Seok-ryu told Mo-yoon she still loves her ex-fiance, she meant that she loves the memories they had together. Otherwise, she's moved on from the relationship. The next day, Seokryu's mother reverts to her antics of trying to set Seokryu up with her fiance in an effort to send her back to the US. Seokryu is compelled to wear a dress, and she finds Yeonjun waiting for her outside. Fortunately, Seong-hyo appears as her knight in shining armor, and they cycle towards Seokryu's cooking class, leaving Yeonjun behind. While on the bike, they end up bickering, and Seok-ryu angrily leaves for her class with part of her makeup imprinted on Seung-hyo's back, thanks to his sudden braking. Meanwhile, Dan-ho picks up his daughter from school, and on their way back, an accident occurs. Fortunately, Mo-won is nearby and springs into action, ultimately saving a man suffering from cardiac arrest. Lucky for her, Yondu is completely enamored by her, and Mo-un is able to win her favor. While returning home with Dan Ho and Yondu, Mo-un expresses her admiration for the man who cleared the way for the ambulance, only to be embarrassed when she discovers the man is none other than Dan Ho. She hurries home trying to calm her pounding heart. On the other hand, Hyunjun has been waiting for Seok-ryu to return and proposes having a farewell lunch together. Later that night, Sung-hyo meets Seok-ryu while she's out on a walk and almost confesses his feelings, but she stops him, asking him to continue later when she's feeling less chaotic. The next day is Sung-hyo's mother Hye-suk's birthday, but nobody seems to remember. Sung-hyo leaves early to meet Tae-hwe at her workshop. Tae-hwe shows him the pot she completed for their project, and they later decide to have a meal together. They end up at the same restaurant as Seok-ryu and Hyunjun. This makes Seok-ryu uncomfortable, while Sung-hyo feels jealous, especially since Seok-ryu had promised him she didn't want to get back together with Hyunjun. After lunch, although Hyunjun insists on meeting regularly, Seok-ryu sternly turns him down. Meanwhile, after spending the entire day alone, Hae-suk's friends finally throw her a surprise party, and she also receives a birthday wish from Sung-hyo. Her husband, who had been on an emergency duty at the hospital, rushes to buy her favorite flowers but stops short when he sees her with the vice minister. Elsewhere, we find that Sung-hyo has won the competition to redevelop the sports complex at his high school. His teacher also tells him how Seok-ryu had been asking about the results for a long time. Sung-hyo realizes he has been stalling his confession for far too long and decides to meet Seok-ryu. He finds her practicing her cooking skills at her father's restaurant and finally tells her that he likes her. Meanwhile, Sung-hyo's mother finds the necklace he gifted her, which she already had. However, since she loves her son, she wears the one he gave her and feels it's better than the one she owned before. It's revealed that Seok-ryu had liked Seung-hyo even before he liked her. She recalls how he helped her when she was afraid of the water. On the other hand, Seung-hyo goes through a post-confession mental breakdown ritual. The two of them then take 3 minutes of screen time to open and close their curtains to see if the other has gone to sleep. The next day, neither of them has had a good night's sleep. While the relationship between Sung-hyo's parents feels strained, as his father now suspects his mother of continuing her affair with the vice minister, Sung-hyo and Seok-ryu meet outside their house. They try to determine the expiration date of Seok-ryu's reply using products in the convenience store, and Sung-hyo chooses a milk packet with an 11-day expiration date. Now Seok-ryu has to give him a reply within this time frame. Meanwhile, Dan-ho gets approval to shadow the paramedics for a day to write an article, inspired by watching Mo-un save the man during the car accident. On the other hand, Hyunjun meets with Seok-ryu's mother and tells her that he still loves Seok-ryu. It's revealed that Seok-ryu's mother wants her daughter to get back together with Hyunjun because she doesn't want Seok-ryu to live a poor life like hers. The next day, we learn that Dongjin dreams of becoming an influencer and wants his mother to buy him Instagram followers. Seok-ryu is against it, and through her conversation with her mother, we discover that Dongjin had a hole in his heart as a child, and the doctor advised his parents not to make him cry. This led to his parents giving him free rein, while Seok-ryu bore the full weight of their expectations. In a brief flashback, we see that Seok-ryu and Hyunjun first met at a cafe where Hyunjun helped her, leading them to start dating. Elsewhere, Sung-hyo and Tai-hwe have a successful presentation of their collaborative project. Sung-hyo also tells Tai-hwe about his confession to Seok-ryu, and Tai-hwe playfully asks him to contact her once he gets rejected. Seok-ryu's mother accidentally discovers that she's taking cooking classes after seeing her leave the academy. Seok-ryu returns home to find Sung-hyo waiting for Dong-jin, who wanted to propose something. This is when Seok-ryu's parents enter and question her about the cooking class. Their argument ends with Seok-ryu leaving the house and Sung-hyo following her. Sung-hyo comforts her and offers his office kitchen for her to practice her cooking skills. The next day, Dan-ho officially joins Mo-yoon's team as a shadow for the day. Despite being stung by bees, he keeps going, gaining an understanding of how difficult the paramedic job is. Later at dinner, Mo-woon's team members mention the only man she's ever been interested in, the mudflat guy. Both she and Dan-ho struggle to contain their awkwardness at the mention of the subject. The next day, Sung-hyo meets Seok-ryu and Hyun-jun on their way to his office. Hyun-jun is adamant and won't leave Seok-ryu alone, using the excuse of inquiring about a building project at Sung-hyo's company while Seok-ryu practices in the kitchen. Sung-hyo turns Hyun-jun down, but Hyun-jun insists on staying to taste Seok-ryu's food. After Seok-ryu serves them the meal, she collapses with intense stomach pains. While Seung-hyo offers to take her to the hospital, she chooses Hyun-jun instead, momentarily hurting Seung-hyo's feelings. At the hospital, we learn that the career break Seok-ryu took was because she was diagnosed with stomach cancer 3 years ago and had undergone surgery and chemotherapy. Seok-ryu and Hyun-jun's lovely relationship when Hyun-jun first proposed to her. Unfortunately, this is when Seok-ryu discovered that she had stomach cancer. Hyunjun decided to take a leave from work to care for her and support her throughout the difficult process. We jump back to the present, where Seok-ryu refuses to leave with Hyunjun, and Sung-hyo arrives at the hospital to pick her up. However, she doesn't tell Sung-hyo the reason behind her stomach ache. In another flashback, she hides her illness from her mother, feeling troubled and alone. Meanwhile, Sung-hyo is troubled by the fact that Seok-ryu decided to depend on Hyun-jun in her time of need rather than on him, and he shares this with Mo-yoon. Now, Mo-yoon is beginning to have feelings for Dan-ho. The next day, Seok-ryu faces tensions in her family due to her decision to pursue cooking as a career. On the other hand, a curious case of a broken washing machine brings Sung-hyo's parents together. Later, Seok-ryu meets with Hyun-jun, who proposes to her a second time, wanting to restart their lives anew. Later that night, she shares this development with Sung-hyo, turning his feelings down, but Sung-hyo decides to wait for her to reconsider. The next day, Mayum is losing her Mayum heart for Danho as she rereads his remarkable article written on the theme of paramedics. Danho secretly shares these feelings as well. Since his conversation with Seok-ryu, Sung-hyo hasn't been sleeping well. The next day, the company also gets entangled in a case where their construction is halted due to a neighbor wanting to create problems in return for a settlement. The papers of approval to begin construction that the company had the neighbors sign also appear to be missing for this person. This makes Sung-hyo even more troubled. While going back home, Mi-suk invites him in for dinner. He meets Seok-ryu while having dinner, and Seok-ryu turns him down directly. After going to her room, she recalls how she'd developed depression after her cancer treatment, which greatly affected her relationship with Hyun-jun. It's also revealed that Hyun-jun hadn't cheated on Seok-ryu, but he had been feeling the pressure of her illness. In response to Hyun-jun's second proposal, Seok-ryu replies, "I don't need love anymore. The stomach I have left can barely handle digesting my dream," turning Hyun-jun down. Looking at her scarred stomach, Seok-ryu decides that it's best to keep Sung-hyo away from the truth. The next day, since Dan-ho asks Mayun for help in keeping Yondu company because her babysitter has had an emergency, Yondu stays with Moyun's mother for the day. Meanwhile, Dongjin, who had been converting to become a fitness influencer and is greedy for promotional income, decides to promote an unauthorized project and is yelled at by his trainer. At Sung Hyo's company, things fall into place when the company helps the man repair his broken pipes, but Sung Hyo falls sick due to the pressure of the last couple of days. In a dream, he remembers how Seok Ryu had always been there whenever he was sick, and quite accurately, he wakes up to find Seok Ryu tending to him. He asks her to leave, deciding he cannot be friends with her anymore, but discovers the truth about her stomach cancer in a hospital report inside her bag. This leads to an emotional confrontation between him and Sokryu, which is heightened when Sokryu's mother and Songhyo's mother find out about Sokryu's illness. The family discovering Sokryu's illness. Her mother finds out first, and Seung-hyo is shocked when he sees her hospital report. He informs the rest of the family, all equally stunned, while Seok-ryu breaks down, trying to convince everyone that she's fine now. We also learn that when Seok-ryu was first diagnosed, Seung-hyo had been in the US. After seeing her with Hyunjun, he ghosted her, despite her attempts to reach out, leaving her to suffer alone. Now, Seung-hyo feels immense guilt and anger at himself. The following day, everyone at home is trying to hide their swollen eyes. Seok-ryu's parents make an effort to care for her, and even her brother, Dong-jin, adapts to the new family dynamics. Mo-yun learns about Seok-ryu's surgery and rushes to see her, putting on a strong front to comfort her friend. Meanwhile, Sung-yo is in a terrible mood, and his father reassures him that they will make Seok-ryu better. Mi-suk's friends also come to support her. Later, Mo-un accidentally encounters Dan-ho, but wearing earphones, she doesn't hear him approach and throws him with a one-arm shoulder throw, showing off her black belt techniques. Once she realizes it's Dan-ho, they talk, and Mo-yun admits she's trying to be strong for Seokru. Dan-ho shares the tragic story of how his wife died 2 years ago in an accident, leaving his daughter Yondu as the sole survivor. In a vulnerable moment, Mo-eun kisses him, but then, realizing what she's done, she headbutts him and runs off. Elsewhere, Seung-hyo's mother, Hye-suk, meets with the vice minister, who turns out to be an old college friend. It's revealed she's being pressured to resign from her position. On his way home, Seung-hyo runs into Seok-ryu. They argue at the playground, with Seung-hyo accusing her of selfishness for enduring her pain alone. Mid-argument, she walks away. Hyunjun, who overheard their conversation, approaches Sung-hyo and accepts that he should have been more open about his emotions with Seok-ryu like Sung-hyo. He also reveals that Seok-ryu had become depressed a year after her illness. This is when Sung-hyo realizes the results of his ghosting Seok-ryu. The next day, Seok-ryu, who had overheard her parents expressing regret over how they treated her, understanding their pain, goes missing, leaving her phone behind. Mi-suk, worried, calls Sung-hyo, who searches for Seok-ryu everywhere. He finally finds her near the beach. She comically explains that she needed time to meditate and reflect. Sung-hyo urges her to embrace her emotions and not carry the burden alone. Seok-ryu finally breaks down, releasing her pent-up feelings. They reminisce about another time she ran away as a child when Dongjin got a new phone, but she returned because she was worried about her parents. Later, through Sung-hyo's father, Seok-ryu received her biopsy report, revealing her hospital visit was due to a case of inflammation and nothing serious. Sung-hyo hugs her in relief. Meanwhile, Sung-hyo's father, Gyeongjong, decides to have lunch with Hye-suk, recalling the good times they've shared. However, when he arrives at her workplace, he sees her with the vice minister again and overhears rumors about them, leaving dejected. That night, he tells Hye-suk he wants a divorce. Back at Seok-ryu's father's restaurant, her family, along with Seung-hyo and Mo-yun, throw her a welcome home party. Seok-ryu promises not to keep any more secrets, and they all enjoy their time together. Hyunjun realizes he can't be the support Seok-ryu needs and calls her to say he's returning to the US. They part ways, agreeing to hold on to their good memories. The next day, Sung-hyo receives Hyunjun's message about leaving the country. He takes Seok-ryu to the airport so she can say a proper goodbye. Seok-ryu and Hyunjun tearfully part ways, this time for good, and Sung-hyo stays by Seok-ryu's side as she cries. A flashback scene where Seok-ryu and Mo-yun's class makes cakes. When they decide to give their cakes to Seung-hyo, they're surprised to find a group of high school girls wanting to do the same. Mo-yun comments on Seung-hyo's popularity, while Seok-ryu is bitter about it. Later, while learning English, Seung-hyo asks if there's any leftover cake since he'd seen her walking away with it. But Seok-ryu refuses, and we find that Seung-hyo quickly climbed the academic ladder with Seok-ryu's help after quitting swimming. In the present, it's the day after Seok-ryu had cried her eyes out. Later, Seung-hyo joins Seok-ryu's family for breakfast and feels lonely, thinking about how they all eat together. After breakfast, Seok-ryu asks for Seung-hyo's help in translating a French cookbook. While recording him, she falls asleep. She wakes up to find Seung-hyo sleeping beside her and reaches out to touch his face. When he wakes up, he awkwardly runs away. On his way out, he bumps his head on the door while Mo-won is pushing it open to come inside. She buys him an ice pack at a pharmacy but rushes off when she sees Dan-ho coming towards them. Later, we learn that it's the day the milk bottle expires. Both Seung-hyo and Seok-ryu are aware, but since Seung-hyo had seen Seok-ryu cry after Hyun-jun left, he hadn't mentioned the milk. The next day, at the company, Seung-hyo and his team work on an interesting bookstore architecture for a musician. Seok-ryu's parents extend their support for her cooking. Meanwhile, Dan-ho has been taking time off work to pick up Yeon-do, as their babysitter hurt her back. Mo-yun's mother offers to keep Yeon-do company. While in her office, Mo-yun suddenly enters. Her mother takes Yeon-do for ice cream, leaving Mo-yun and Dan-ho in an awkward atmosphere. They apologize to each other for the kiss, Mo-yun for initiating it, and Dan-ho for not stopping it. Hye-suk asks Seung-hyo for a family dinner. Seung-hyo is excited and makes a reservation, only to find out that his mother is leaving the country again and his parents are getting a divorce. In a flashback scene, we see an argument between Seung-hyo's parents about Hye-suk moving to Africa. In her anger, Hye-suk says she should never have had Seung-hyo. The 7-year-old Seung-hyo overhears this, and it stays with him even after Hye-suk apologizes, claiming she didn't mean it. In the present, Seung-hyo leaves the dinner midway and drinks at a tent restaurant until Seok-ryu is called to pick him up by the owner. While drunk, Seung-hyo shares how he had always wanted a family like Seok-ryu's and tells her about his parents' divorce. Seok-ryu manages to get him back to his office, where she notices the milk carton still in the refrigerator. The next day, Seung-hyo's parents visit family court, but they must wait a month for the divorce to be finalized. Later, Hye-suk breaks the news to Mi-suk, and as she's leaving, Seok-ryu tells her about Seung-hyo's pain, even though he doesn't express it openly. On the other hand, Mo-yun dreams about Dan-ho being a superhero called Mudflat Man who helps her save patients. She wakes up with a start just as they are about to share a kiss. That day, they spend time with Yeon-do at the sauna. Yeon-do feels sad about not having a mother, but Mo-won comforts her. The next day, we find that Seung-hyo has been living in his office since he found out about his parents' divorce. He feels sad about not having even one family photo, so Seok-ryu gives him one from when they were 7 years old. She also reminds him that Hye-suk is leaving that day. Seung-hyo calls his father to check the flight timings, but is shocked to learn that he's at the police station. Seung-hyo and Seok-ryu discover that Hye-suk went missing from the airport, leaving her mobile inside her suitcase. They ask everyone about her whereabouts. Seung-hyo's father calls her colleague, rumored to be having an affair with her, and learns about her illness. She's been forgetting things lately. With Mi-suk's help, they search for Hye-suk around the Buddhist temple she used to visit for hiking. After searching for a while, they finally find her injured. Hye-suk and her husband finally become truthful with each other and share their feelings. This was when she had fallen asleep. Seung-hyo had said that he would continue to like her even after the milk carton expired. Seok-ryu then decides to find Seung-hyo, takes Mo-yun's car, and meets him in a flower field, where she finally asks him out on a date, sharing banana milk. Seung-hyo takes the hint, and the couple finally shares a kiss.